I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I am one of this generation's most brilliant scientific minds. And yet, just because I do all of my research within the 2008 life simulation game Spore, apparently I'm not eligible for a Nobel Prize. Well, I was so angered by this that, I hate to admit it, I've made a mistake. Somewhere amongst my many successful experiments, I made a species of ducks. They seemed innocent enough until things started to get a bit out of hand. Before I knew it, they had formed a duck mafia, ruled by an evil tyrant known as the Ducktator. Since then, the Ducktator had found his way into my other save files, corrupting my game. I've searched through all of my Windows firewall settings, but I think we now have only one hope. The fate of my game, of the world, lay in the wings of my original uncorrupted specimen. To take down this evil organization, we would be using Patient Zero, also known as Dimitri the Duck. The big issue was that Dimitri had been captured by the mafia already and was currently being held captive in a high-security prison. Nice one, Dimitri? Yes, this cage was completely inescapable. He would never see the sun again, doomed to die here alone. But as well as being very morbid, that wasn't necessarily true, as, peering into the cage next to him, he spotted, "Huh? Mr. Pinchy, what are you doing here?" Mr. Pinchy was a legendary galactic hero, but also a crab, and crabs have very poor attention spans. So before he could explain how he too was captured, he got bored of being in prison and used his crab claws to snip his way out. Thankfully, he wasn't quite bored enough to ignore letting Dimitri go too. And just like that, their jailbreak had begun. Sneaking their way past the armoured sentry guards, they sprinted through a maze of sinister corridors before reaching a mysterious, futuristic room. Machines whirred and beeped around them, and as they reached the back of the hall, a console of sorts displayed a screen which read Master Plan Volume 2. It detailed a map marked with a series of beacons, the instructions reading that once each beacon was activated, it would create a bridge between worlds, crossing an unknown void space known as the menu. This was all very confusing. I mean, what did one of these beacons even look like? Thankfully, there was a prototype example in the showroom next to them. According to the screen, 2 beacons had already been compromised. This was bad news. If the Ducktator got his filthy wings on any more, he could mount a conquest of the whole universe. Dimitri's only option was to beat him to it, and he headed straight for the prison exit, hoping to find the remaining beacons and recruit a rebel force before the Ducktator could amass an army of his own. But hang on, Dimitri, this doesn't seem like the exit. This is way too high up in the air to be at... Oh dear. It was too late. Poachers, ducks, a giant whelk, and even a giant mushroom for some reason. The worst of the worst had already gathered, chanting and screaming the Ducktator's name in a foul chorus. The enemy would strike before anybody knew they were coming. Time was of the essence, and, in a panic, Dimitri sprinted back to the showroom and took a gamble. Jumping straight into the prototype beacon he had seen earlier, he was surprised to find that it actually worked, and he was teleported to a completely different planet. Right, now to find those beacons, but hold on, what on earth is going on over there? A council of gigantic wide boys were positioned in a semicircle, the same semicircle formation that the beacons had appeared in on the map. So that's how it worked. The pieces were all fitting into place. At some point during their evolution, these wide boys had grown so wide that the very fabric of reality stretched around them, thus merging points in time and space together. Yes, it all made so much sense. And by that logic, to teleport between save files, Dimitri would have to enter these wide boys one by one. Don't get your minds out of the gutter, everyone. This is a PG show. What was worse, it appeared the French, soldiers of the Ducktator's right-hand man Napoleon, had begun attacking the first wide boy. With a great running jump, Dimitri flung himself into the creature's immense width. He was engulfed in a blazing white light. Stars, constellations, the very fabric of space itself melted around him until, as if by magic, he had arrived on an entirely new planet and was confronted by eggs. What? Why were there just a bunch of fried eggs? What was this, the chicken planet or something? But where he expected to find chicken, he instead found beef. A tribe of burgers had set up a restaurant nearby. These were not exactly the warriors Dimitri was hoping to recruit. Sure, they made a hell of an Eggs Benedict, but oh shizzle, listen, I can hear the sound of accordions, the French have arrived. The Napoleonic soldiers marched into the village and began to tear the poor delicious gourmet guys to shreds. It was hopeless. These burgers had no means of defense. Their only armor was that of a sesame-seeded bun. It appeared Dimitri would have to find his fighters elsewhere. But just as the battle appeared to be over, the burger's head chefs and sous chefs went and grabbed a bunch of bug zappers from the kitchen supply cabinet, and, against the odds, they began to immobilize the French forces by electrocuting them one after the other. This technique was highly effective. Perhaps a hamburger taser unit would be just what the resistance needed. With that, the burgers were on side, and they followed Dimitri back through the Wide-Boy wormhole as he prepared to venture through his second beacon. With another running jump, this time he found himself in some sort of frozen wasteland. Forget soldiers, Dimitri would be surprised to find any life at all out here, but oh, he stood corrected. What in the name of sanity were two elephants doing out here? It just so turned out that these were Stinky and Small Paul, a newlywed couple who were hoping to celebrate their honeymoon with some old friends in the form of a bunch of goats. Dimitri didn't want to ruin the elephants' holiday with news about the potential end of the universe, so he attempted to recruit the goats to his side instead. The goats, however, were not very helpful. They told Dimitri that the time of goats is over, and then proceeded to walk away into the distance. In a turn of fortune, however, Stinky happened to know a good number of creatures, and she said that if it was new friends they were looking for, they just had to visit the next planet over. So back through the Wide-Boy teleportation system it was, and this time their journey took them into a swamp. Ugh. Dimitri wasn't sure about this, and he was even less certain when they were immediately surrounded by a group of weird-looking frogs. But it wasn't frogs that Stinky had brought them here to meet. Instead, they were to be introduced to one of the oldest and wisest powers in the galaxy, the Soup Dragons. Wow, with these on his side, even a giant whelk wouldn't stand a chance. But the Soup Dragons were currently busy cooking up a huge order of their world-famous soup. Some far-off political figure was having a large gathering, and apparently he needed party snacks. Something about feeding an army or something? Oh, yeah. Dimitri had forgotten to mention about the massive army marching their way, so he began to divulge all of the Ducktator's master plans, this time remembering to include the part where everybody everywhere is overcome by infinite warfare. Stinky was surprisingly chill about the situation. Sure, there was a distant threat, but the universe was so big that it would take them ages to march over to a place such as this. Oh no, the Ducktator was right behind them, wasn't he? To make things worse, he had brought a battalion of big thighs with him, who, despite being held off momentarily by the local frogs, were absolutely rapid, like unbelievably fast. They were so quick, in fact, that in the resulting chase, Dimitri, the most athletic of their crew, had to draw them away, and he and the elephants were separated. A member down as they escaped the soup caverns, Stinky was now grasping the severity of their circumstances. What in the world did she do next? She could try hiring a group of sellsword mercenaries she'd heard about known as the Cannons Division, but with the cost of the honeymoon, as well as spending all of her hard-earned cash buying Small Paul back from a group of poachers, she couldn't afford them. All of their hopes now lay on the other side of these two final Wide-Boy wormholes. Please let this next one lead to an actually good planet. Come on, just give us a bit of luck, but oh no. Anywhere but there. The penultimate teleporter was connected straight to the Whelk Zone. The Ducktator had beaten them to it. He had already opened the gate, which, this time, spanned not just through space, but back through time, to a point where whelks had not yet been extinct. A sea of ancient evil mollusks came pouring through the portal, and, in a split decision, Stinky gave Small Paul some crucial instructions. she ordered him to take what fighters they had through the final wormhole to the fabled elephant stronghold of Helm's Toot. It was there they would make their final stand, but she would not join him just yet. Stinky had business elsewhere. Look for me to the east, at first light on the second or third-ish day. It was difficult to be specific about timings now that time travel was part of the equation. And with that, the newlyweds bid each other farewell. Paul and the Burgers marched through the portal and across a vast grassy plateau, all the way to the impressive Helm's Toot. Built by the mighty elephant clans of old, its walls were near impenetrable, save for a big archway in the middle which was unideal for defensive purposes. What was even more unideal though, was the numbers they had. They couldn't man such a gargantuan fortress with a crab and a couple of burgers. What was Stinky thinking? This place would not be their salvation, it was merely the home of their inevitable demise. The low drone of a war horn echoed throughout the walls of the castle. So it begins. They were here, but hang on, that wasn't the Ducktator's war horn. That sounded more like the song Ocean Man by Ween. A ray of hope. Dimitri was alive! And, to everyone's delight, he had brought much needed reinforcements. A regiment of frogs, followed by the legendary sea monster Leviathan, come to avenge their sadly departed green scaly friend. And it didn't stop there, for, by letting Commander Colin have a few free shots of his sniper rifle, Dimitri had managed to sign up the Cannons Division as well. Paul couldn't believe it. There was still some good in this universe, and they would not go down without a fight. The cannons took their positions along the wall, ready to rain fire onto whatever wicked creatures would soon march below, and they had formed their ranks not a moment too soon, as, with an explosive boom, the wormhole reopened, and, in a force bigger than the galaxy had ever seen, the Ducktator's army had arrived.